The morning started like any other on Kepler 442b. Dr. Rebecca Torres walked through the research station checking the daily reports. The air was clean and cool. Birds that looked like tiny dragons flew between the purple trees outside her window. She had been studying life on this planet for 6 months now. Rebecca loved her work. At 32 years old, she had already discovered 3 new species of plants that could help make medicine. Her research partner, Dr. James Miller, was excited about their latest find. They had found bacteria that could clean polluted water in just hours. "Rebecca, come look at this," James called from his lab across the hall. His voice was full of excitement. She walked over to see what he had found. James pointed to his computer screen. "The bacteria samples from yesterday are doing something amazing. They are breaking down toxins faster than we thought possible. This could change everything back on Earth." Rebecca smiled as she looked at the data. "This is incredible, James. We need to send this information back to Earth Command right away. They will want to start testing immediately." The research station was small but comfortable. 14 people worked there, all scientists and support staff. They were far from Earth, but they had everything they needed. The station had strong shields and good communication systems. Nothing had ever gone wrong before. Rebecca was in the middle of writing her report when the alarms started screaming. The lights in the station turned red. A loud voice came over the speakers. "All personnel to emergency stations. Unknown ships approaching." This is not a drill. Rebecca ran to the command center where James and 10 other staff members were already gathered. The security chief, Tom Davis, was staring at his screens with worry on his face. "What do we have, Tom?" Rebecca asked. 5 ships, maybe more," Tom said without looking away from his screen. They appeared out of nowhere. No communication, no identification signals. "They are coming straight for us." Rebecca felt her heart start beating faster. She had military training before becoming a scientist. She knew this was not a normal visit. "Are they human ships?" "No," Tom said quietly. "The design is completely alien. I have never seen anything like them." Through the big windows of the command center, Rebecca could see the ships coming down through the clouds. They were dark and angular, like metal sharks swimming through the sky. They moved in perfect formation, which told her these were military vessels. "Send out a distress signal to Earth," Rebecca ordered. "Tell them we are under attack." Tom worked at his controls. After a few seconds, he looked up with fear in his eyes. "Communication is being blocked. They are jamming all our signals." The alien ships landed around the research station. Rebecca watched as ramps dropped down and soldiers began pouring out. They looked like giant lizards walking on 2 legs. Each one carried weapons that glowed with strange energy. "Everyone listen carefully," Rebecca said to the group. "These are raiders. I've read about them in military reports. They are called Vorthons. They capture people to sell as slaves." James grabbed her arm. "What do we do?" Before Rebecca could answer, the main door to the station exploded inward. Smoke filled the room as the Vorthon soldiers charged inside. They were 7 feet tall with green scales covering their bodies. Their eyes glowed yellow in the red emergency lights. The leader of the aliens was bigger than the others. He had scars across his face and wore armor that showed his high rank. He looked around the room at the terrified humans and made a sound that might have been laughter. "I am Commander Krell Voss," the alien said in perfect English. "This station now belongs to us. You will come with us quietly or you will die." Tom Davis, the security chief, tried to reach for his weapon. The alien commander moved faster than Rebecca thought possible. A beam of energy shot from his weapon. Tom screamed once and then fell to the ground, dead. "Anyone else want to be a hero?" Commander Krell asked. Rebecca felt anger burning inside her chest. These creatures had just murdered Tom in cold blood. But she knew that fighting now would only get more people killed. She had to think smart. "We will cooperate," Rebecca said, stepping forward. "But these people are just scientists. They are not valuable to you." Commander Krell looked at her with interest. A human female who thinks she can negotiate. How amusing. He walked closer to Rebecca until his face was only inches from hers. "Every human is valuable in the slave markets, female. Your species is new and exotic. Rich aliens pay good money for human pets." Rebecca felt sick but kept her face calm. "I understand. But killing us reduces our value. Dead slaves bring no profit." The commander made that laughing sound again. "Smart. You might survive longer than the others." He turned to his soldiers. "Take them all alive. Kill anyone who resists." The next few minutes were chaos. The Vorthans pushed the humans around, tying their hands with strange metal cables. Rebecca watched everything carefully. She counted the soldiers. She noted their weapons. She memorized the layout of their equipment. When they brought the humans outside, Rebecca saw more aliens loading equipment and research data from the station. They were taking everything of value. James was next to her, tears running down his face. "They killed Tom," James whispered. "They just killed him like he was nothing." "Stay calm," Rebecca whispered back. "We need to survive long enough to find a way out of this." Commander Krell walked up to them as his soldiers finished loading their ship. "Your research data looks interesting," he said to Rebecca. "Medical discoveries are always valuable. Perhaps we can sell your knowledge along with your bodies." Rebecca said nothing, but inside she was planning. She had noticed something important. The Vorthans were confident, maybe too confident. They thought humans were weak and helpless. They had not searched the prisoners carefully. They had not taken away the small tools that some of the scientists still carried. The alien ship was huge inside. The humans were pushed into a cargo hold that was already filled with other prisoners from different species. Rebecca counted 43 humans total, including 5 children from the colony. As the ship lifted off from Kepler 442b, Rebecca looked through a small window at the research station below. Smoke was rising from the buildings. Everything she and James had worked for was gone. But Rebecca Torres was not broken. She was angry, and she was already planning her revenge. The Vorthans thought they had captured helpless prey. They had no idea what humans could become when pushed too far. They were about to learn that sometimes the hunted could become the hunter. The ship jumped into hyperspace, carrying its human cargo toward an uncertain future. But Rebecca was no longer thinking like a prisoner. She was thinking like a predator who was just waiting for the right moment to strike. The slave market on Nexus Prime was like nothing Rebecca had ever seen. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy were bought and sold like animals. The air smelled of fear and desperation. Alien voices shouted prices in languages she did not understand. Rebecca stood on the auction platform with her hands chained behind her back. She had spent 3 weeks on the Vorthan ship learning everything she could about her captors. She knew their schedules, their weaknesses, and most importantly, their arrogance. The auctioneer was a fat slug-like creature that spoke through a mechanical voice box. "Next we have prime human specimens," it announced to the crowd. "Fresh from the frontier colonies. Look at this female. Strong bones, good muscle tone, perfect for combat or breeding." Rebecca felt sick but kept her face blank. She scanned the crowd of potential buyers. Most were wealthy aliens looking for exotic pets. But one buyer caught her attention. He was massive, covered in brown fur like a giant bear. He wore expensive clothes and had the look of someone used to getting what he wanted. "I am Overlord Thane Brutok," the bear creature announced in a booming voice. "I will take the human female. She looks like she might last more than one fight in my arena." The auctioneer was happy to make the sale. Sold to Overlord Brutok for 50,000 credits. As Rebecca was led away, she caught sight of James being sold to a different buyer. She wanted to help him, but she knew she had to focus on her own survival first. She would find a way to save the others later. Overlord Thane's transport ship was luxurious compared to the Vorthan vessel. Rebecca was put in a cell, but it had a bed and clean water. She used the time to think and plan. When they arrived at Thane's facility, Rebecca was amazed by its size. The arena complex was huge, with towers reaching into the sky. Thousands of spectators could watch the gladiator fights from comfortable seats. Below ground were the training areas and holding cells for the fighters. "Welcome to your new home, human," Thane said as he showed Rebecca around. "You will fight for my entertainment and profit. Win and you eat well, lose and you die. It is very simple." Rebecca was put in a cell next to other gladiators. Her neighbor was a human man named Marcus Bradley. He had been captured 6 months earlier while serving on an Earth military ship. "They call me Marcus," he said through the bars between their cells. "Used to be Captain Marcus Bradley of the Earth Defense Force. Now I am just another fighter trying to stay alive." "Dr. Rebecca Torres," she replied. "How long do fighters usually survive here?" Marcus laughed bitterly. "Most last about 3 fights. I have won 12 so far. The crowd loves watching humans fight because we are supposed to be weak. When we win, it surprises them." Rebecca spent her first weeks learning everything she could about the arena and her fellow fighters. There were dozens of different alien species, each with their own strengths and weaknesses. She studied them like she once studied bacteria samples. Her first fight came sooner than expected. She was put against a Calarian warrior, a 7-foot-tall creature with 4 arms and skin like rock. The crowd cheered as the fight began, expecting to see the human torn apart quickly. But Rebecca had studied the Calarians. She knew their joints were weak points where the rock-like skin was thinner. She also knew they were slow to turn because of their heavy bodies. When the warrior charged at her, she dodged to the side and struck at the joint in his knee. The warrior fell hard. Rebecca grabbed a broken piece of stone from the arena floor and drove it into the weak spot at the base of his skull. The crowd went wild as the mighty warrior fell dead. Overlord Thane was impressed but not worried. "Beginner's luck," he told his guests. "She will not survive the next fight." But Rebecca did survive. She won fight after fight by using her intelligence instead of just strength. She learned to read the crowd and play to their emotions. She made allies among the other fighters by sharing information about weaknesses she discovered. After 2 months, Rebecca was undefeated. The crowd started calling her the human predator because of the way she studied her opponents before fights. She had become Thane's most valuable fighter. Marcus had also survived his fights and become Rebecca's closest ally. Together, they began to plan something bigger than just winning fights. They started mapping the arena's security systems and learning the guards' routines. "The other fighters respect you," Marcus told her one night. "If you gave the word, most of them would follow you. They are tired of fighting and dying for Thane's profit." Rebecca nodded. "Soon, but not yet. We need to be smarter than just a prison break. We need to hurt Thane in a way that matters." Her opportunity came when Thane announced a special event. Rebecca would fight his champion, a massive cyborg called Destroyer 7. It was supposed to be impossible to beat. The betting was heavily against Rebecca, but she had been watching the cyborg's previous fights carefully. She noticed that its programming had a flaw. It always attacked the same way when facing smaller opponents. If she could exploit that weakness at the right moment, she might have a chance. The night before the fight, Rebecca made her decision. "Tomorrow I do not just win the fight," she told Marcus. "Tomorrow I challenge Thane himself." Marcus looked shocked. "That is suicide, Rebecca. He is 3 times your size and has been fighting for decades." Rebecca smiled coldly. "Size does not matter if you know where to strike. And I have been studying him too. Every species has weaknesses, Marcus. Even overlords." The next morning, Rebecca walked into the arena knowing that her life as a slave was about to end. One way or another, she would be free. Or she would be dead. But she would never kneel again. The crowd cheered as she entered the arena to face the champion. They thought they were about to watch her die. They had no idea they were about to witness the birth of a legend. The arena was packed with 10,000 spectators. Aliens from across the galaxy had come to watch the human female fight the unbeatable champion. The betting pools were enormous. Everyone expected Rebecca to die in minutes. Destroyer 7 entered the arena to thunderous cheers. The cyborg stood 9 feet tall with metal arms and legs powered by energy cores. Half of its head was machine, glowing with red sensors. It had killed over 200 fighters in 5 years. No one had ever lasted more than 3 minutes against it. Rebecca walked to the center of the arena wearing simple leather armor. She looked tiny next to the massive cyborg. The crowd laughed and made jokes about the foolish human who thought she could win. But Rebecca was not afraid. She had spent weeks studying the cyborg's fight recordings. She knew exactly what it would do. "Begin," announced the arena master. Destroyer 7 immediately charged forward with its metal fists swinging. This was exactly what Rebecca expected. The cyborg's programming made it attack small opponents with an overhead punch followed by a left hook. It never changed this pattern. Rebecca waited until the last second, then rolled between the cyborg's legs. As it turned around, she was already moving. She grabbed a sharp piece of metal from the arena floor and jammed it into the cyborg's power coupling at the base of its spine. Sparks flew as the cyborg's systems began to fail. It swung wildly, but its movements were now slow and uncoordinated. Rebecca danced around it, striking at weak points in its armor. Finally, she climbed onto its back and drove her makeshift weapon deep into its main processor. Destroyer 7 crashed to the ground, dead. The arena fell silent. No one could believe what they had just seen. A human woman had defeated the unbeatable champion using nothing but intelligence and courage. Overlord Thane stood up from his viewing box, his face red with anger. Impossible. She must have cheated somehow. Rebecca looked up at the Overlord and made her voice carry across the arena. I invoke the right of challenge, she called out in the ancient language of Thane's people. I claim victory over your champion and challenge you to single combat for leadership of this house. The crowd gasped. No slave had ever invoked the ancient laws. But the right of challenge was sacred to Thane's species. He could not refuse without losing all honor. Thane's advisors whispered urgently in his ear. You must refuse, and they said. She is just a human. The law was not meant for slaves, but Thane's pride was greater than his wisdom. I accept the challenge, he roared. I will crush this insolent human with my bare hands. The arena was cleared for single combat. Thane descended to the fighting floor wearing his ceremonial armor. He carried weapons that had been in his family for generations. He was confident that his size and experience would win easily. Rebecca studied him as he approached. She knew from watching him that he favored his right side because of an old injury to his left shoulder. He was strong but slow. Most importantly, he underestimated her because she was human and female. The fight began with Thane swinging his massive sword. Rebecca dodged and rolled, staying away from his reach. The crowd thought she was running scared, but she was actually learning his timing and rhythm. Thane grew frustrated as his attacks missed. Stand still and fight like a warrior, he bellowed. I am fighting like a human, Rebecca replied calmly. She continued to avoid his attacks while striking quick blows at his weak points. Her knowledge of alien anatomy served her well. She knew exactly where each species kept their vital organs and major blood vessels. After 10 minutes, Thane was breathing heavily. His armor was dented in several places where Rebecca had struck with precision. His left arm was barely functional due to damage to his injured shoulder. You fight without honor, Thane gasped. I fight to win, Rebecca answered. She saw her opening when Thane raised his sword for a killing blow. Instead of dodging backward, she rushed forward and drove her blade up under his armor into his heart. The Overlord looked shocked as he fell forward. How? He whispered with his dying breath. Because you thought I was prey, Rebecca said quietly. But humans are the greatest predators this galaxy has ever seen. The arena exploded with noise as Thane died. By the ancient laws, Rebecca was now the rightful leader of his organization. She stood over his body and raised her weapon high. I am Rebecca Torres, she announced to the crowd. I claim this house and all who serve it. Any who wish to leave may do so freely. Any who stay will follow my orders without question. Most of Thane's old guards and administrators left immediately. They could not accept being ruled by a former slave. But many of the gladiators and lower-level workers stayed. They had seen what Rebecca could do and wanted to be part of something new. Marcus was the first to kneel before her. What are your orders, boss? Rebecca looked around at her new domain. The arena, the training facilities, the weapons and ships, everything she needed to start building something bigger. Free all the slaves, she commanded. Offer them positions in our organization if they want them. Those who choose to leave get safe passage and enough money to start new lives. And then? Marcus asked. Rebecca's eyes grew cold as she thought about Commander Krell Voss and all the other slavers who preyed on innocent people. Then we hunt. There are slave traders throughout this sector who think they are safe. They are about to learn what happens when humans decide to become predators. Within hours, word began to spread throughout the criminal underworld. The human gladiator had killed Overlord Thane and taken control of his empire. Some laughed at the news. Others began to worry. But Rebecca was already planning her next moves. She had weapons, ships, and loyal followers. More importantly, she had learned the true secret of human strength. It was not their muscles or their technology. It was their ability to adapt, to learn, and to never give up. The galaxy had made a terrible mistake when it decided to hunt humanity. Now it was time for the prey to become the predator. The hunt was about to begin. 6 months after taking control of Thane's empire, Rebecca had transformed everything. The gladiator arena now served as a training center for rescued slaves. The luxury suites where rich aliens once watched fights had become command centers and living quarters for her growing organization. Her first major target had been the Vorthon slave ship that captured her. Using intelligence gathered from freed slaves, Rebecca tracked down Commander Krell Voss to a trading station on the Rim Worlds. The attack was swift and brutal. Krell died never understanding how the weak human he had captured had become his destroyer. Word of Rebecca's victory spread quickly through the underground networks. Slaves began to whisper her name in a dozen languages. Free her, they said, and she will give you a chance to strike back. Some called her the Liberator. Others knew her as the Predator Queen. Rebecca established her main base on a rogue planet in the Void Reaches, far from any government control. She named it Haven, and it quickly grew from a small outpost into a thriving city. Ships arrived daily carrying refugees, freed slaves, and volunteers who wanted to join her cause. Dr. Elena Rodriguez was one of the most valuable additions to Rebecca's team. Elena had been captured from a research vessel and spent 2 years as a slave before Rebecca's forces freed her. As a former scientist, she understood both human and alien technology. "We can do amazing things by combining human creativity with alien science," Elena told Rebecca during one of their planning meetings. "Their technology is more advanced, but they think in rigid patterns. We can innovate in ways they never imagined." Captain Tom Bradley brought different skills to the organization. The former Earth Navy officer had been enslaved for 3 years before joining Rebecca. He knew military tactics and could train their people to fight like soldiers instead of gladiators. "The key is mobility and intelligence," Tom explained as he reviewed their fleet status. "We cannot match the big power ship for ship, but we can hit them where they least expect it and disappear before they can respond." Rebecca's intelligence network was her greatest weapon. Every freed slave who returned to their homeworld became a potential source of information. They worked as servants, laborers, and low-level employees throughout the galaxy. No one paid attention to them, which made them perfect spies. Through this network, Rebecca learned about Senator Vex Morden of the Galactic Federation. The senator publicly supported anti-slavery laws while secretly profiting from the trade. He owned shell companies that provided ships and equipment to slavers throughout the Outer Rim. Instead of attacking Morden directly, Rebecca chose a more subtle approach. She gathered detailed evidence of his crimes using her spy network: financial records, communication logs, shipping manifests, everything needed to prove his guilt. But Rebecca did not give the evidence to Federation authorities. Instead, she gave it to Senator Lisa Adams, Morden's political rival who genuinely opposed slavery. Adams was ambitious and saw an opportunity to destroy her enemy while advancing her own career. The scandal erupted across Federation space. Senator Morden was arrested on live television, as evidence of his crimes was broadcast to billions of citizens. His entire political faction collapsed as other members tried to distance themselves from the scandal. Rebecca watched the news coverage from her command center on Haven. "One down," she said quietly. Hundreds more to go. Her next target was the Nexus Consortium, a group of corporations that controlled much of the slave trade's financial infrastructure. They provided banking services, insurance, and legal protection for slavers. Without them, the trade would be much harder to maintain. Rebecca's approach was economic warfare. Her agents began spreading rumors about consortium financial stability, while her hackers fed false information into their trading algorithms. At the same time, she encouraged coordinated strikes and boycotts on worlds where consortium companies operated. The attack worked perfectly. Stock prices crashed as investors panicked and pulled their money out. 3 major consortium corporations went bankrupt within weeks. The survivors were forced to publicly end all involvement with the slave trade to restore confidence. But Rebecca's greatest achievement was uniting the galaxy's scattered resistance movements. For centuries, different species had fought slavery separately, never coordinating their efforts. Rebecca changed that by creating the Liberation Network. Using her base on Haven as a coordination center, she began connecting resistance groups across the galaxy. She shared intelligence, weapons, and tactical expertise. Groups that had been fighting losing battles alone suddenly found themselves part of a galaxy-wide movement. The Sarn Empire noticed the change first. Their slave raids began failing as local populations fought back with better organization and equipment. Intelligence reports spoke of a mysterious human leader who seemed to be everywhere at once. Emperor Sarn himself finally took notice when rebels destroyed 3 major slave processing centers in a single week. "Find this human leader," he commanded his intelligence chief. "I want her brought to me alive." But finding Rebecca was easier said than done. She rarely stayed in one place for long, moving between safe houses and ships throughout Liberation Network territory. Her security was handled by Marcus and a team of former military personnel from a dozen different species. The Galactic Federation was also beginning to worry. President Chen received daily reports about Liberation Network activities. "They are becoming more than just pirates and rebels," his security advisor warned. This Rebecca Torres is building something that looks suspiciously like a government. The Nexus Consortium, despite their recent losses, still had significant power. Their board of directors met in emergency session to discuss the threat Rebecca posed to their remaining interests. She must be eliminated, declared Chairman Voss, a distant relative of the Vorthon commander Rebecca had killed. We cannot allow a former slave to threaten the natural order of galactic society. All three major powers began to see Rebecca as a threat to their authority. The Liberation Network was no longer just freeing slaves. They were building schools, hospitals, and manufacturing centers. They had their own fleet of ships and were training professional military forces. Rebecca understood that her success had made her enemies more dangerous. Standing in her office on Haven Station, she watched construction crews building new defense platforms around the planet. The peaceful phase of her revolution was ending. Marcus entered with intelligence reports from across the galaxy. Our agents report increased military activity in all three major power centers, he said. They are planning something big. Rebecca nodded as she studied star charts showing Liberation Network territory. They were always going to unite against us eventually. The question is whether we are ready for them. Are we? Marcus asked. Rebecca smiled coldly as she looked at the reports of successful operations across the galaxy. Her network now covered hundreds of worlds. Her allies included some of the most skilled fighters and brilliant minds in the galaxy. Most importantly, she had something the major powers lacked. People who were fighting for their freedom instead of just following orders. Let them come, she said quietly. They think they are hunting rebels and pirates. They have no idea they are about to face the galaxy's apex predator. The hunt was about to reach its climax, but this time Rebecca would not be the prey. The largest military fleet in galactic history, assembled at the border of Liberation Network space. Over 10,000 ships from the Galactic Federation, Sarn Empire, and Nexus Consortium formed the Grand Alliance fleet. Every major power had contributed their best vessels and most experienced commanders. Admiral Sarah Mitchell of the Federation Navy commanded the fleet from her flagship, the Titan-class battleship Vengeance. She had spent weeks studying intelligence reports about Rebecca Torres and her organization. What she found worried her more than she admitted to her allies. This is not just a criminal organization, she told the other fleet commanders during their final briefing. They have professional military training, advanced technology, and intelligence networks that rival our own. Do not underestimate them. General Korg of the Sarn Empire laughed dismissively. They are escaped slaves led by a human female. My forces have crushed a dozen rebellions larger than this one. This Rebecca Torres will learn what happens when inferiors challenge their betters. Corporate Executive Williams of the Nexus Consortium was more cautious. My analysts believe Torres has been preparing for this confrontation for months, maybe years. Her defensive positions around Haven are surprisingly sophisticated. Admiral Mitchell nodded grimly. Intelligence suggests she has infiltrated all three of our governments. We must assume she knows we are coming and has prepared accordingly. But even Admiral Mitchell did not realize how deep Rebecca's preparation went. For 2 years, she had been placing agents throughout all three power structures. Former slaves working as servants, clerks, technicians, and low-level officers had fed information to the Liberation Network. Rebecca knew the Alliance fleet's composition, battle plans, and command structure better than some of its own officers. Captain Elena Rodriguez stood beside Rebecca in the command center of Haven Station as they watched the massive enemy fleet approach. Sensors showed 10,847 hostile vessels, Elena reported. Their combined firepower is enough to destroy several star systems. Rebecca studied the tactical display with calm confidence. Numbers do not matter if you can turn them against each other. Are our people in position? Marcus checked his communication console. All sleeper agents confirm ready status. The surprise packages are prepared for delivery. Tom Bradley reviewed the fleet deployments one final time. Our ships are hidden throughout the void reaches as planned. When the trap springs, we will have them surrounded. Rebecca had spent months preparing the most elaborate military deception in galactic history. The Alliance fleet thought they were attacking a desperate rebel base. Instead, they were flying into a carefully planned ambush that would use their own strength against them. The Alliance attack began exactly as Rebecca expected. Their plan was simple and brutal. Overwhelm Haven's defenses with massive firepower while preventing any escape. They had no idea that Rebecca wanted them to attack. Enemy fleet entering the outer sensor grid, Elena announced. They are maintaining standard formation. No indication they suspect our preparations. Rebecca activated the fleet-wide communication system. All stations, this is the Predator Queen. Today we show the galaxy what happens when humans decide to hunt. Execute Order Prime. Across the Alliance fleet, sleeper agents who had spent years in deep cover began their missions. On the Federation flagship Vengeance, Lieutenant James Wright, a former slave who had joined the Navy after being rescued, accessed the ship's navigation system and uploaded a virus that Elena's team had designed. Similar attacks occurred on hundreds of Alliance ships. Computer systems crashed, weapons malfunctioned, and communication networks failed. But the real devastation came from the intelligence Rebecca had gathered. She activated a galaxy-wide broadcast system, hijacking communication networks on every major world. The transmission began with her image appearing on billions of screens throughout known space. Citizens of the galaxy, Rebecca's voice carried to every inhabited world. Your leaders have lied to you. They claim to oppose slavery while secretly profiting from it. Today I present proof of their crimes. What followed was the largest intelligence dump in galactic history. Rebecca released detailed evidence showing how each Alliance government secretly supported the slave trade. Financial records, communication logs, shipping manifests, and video footage of government officials making deals with slavers. The effect was immediate and devastating. On Federation worlds, citizens rioted as they learned their tax money had funded slave ships. Sarn Empire colonies declared independence when they discovered their provincial governors were selling their own people. Nexus Consortium stock prices collapsed as investors realized the scope of the corruption. But Rebecca was not finished. As the Alliance fleet struggled with sabotage and system failures, her hidden forces struck from all directions. Ships emerged from asteroid fields and nebulas where they had been waiting for weeks. The attackers found themselves surrounded by an enemy that knew exactly where to hit. Rebecca personally led the final assault aboard her flagship Liberator. The massive ship was a fusion of human engineering and alien technology, created by Elena's team using resources from across the galaxy. Its weapons could punch through any known armor, and its shields could withstand incredible punishment. Target the command vessels, Rebecca ordered as they closed with the enemy fleet. Remove their leadership and the rest will collapse. The battle was brutal but brief. The Alliance fleet was designed to attack a fixed target, not fight a mobile enemy that seemed to anticipate their every move. Within 6 hours, over half their ships were destroyed or disabled. The survivors retreated in complete disorder. Admiral Mitchell was among the few Alliance commanders to survive. Her flagship had been badly damaged and most of her crew was dead. As she watched Rebecca's forces pursuing the fleeing remnants of her fleet, she finally understood what they had faced. She was never the hunted, Mitchell said quietly to her surviving officers. She was always the predator. We just took too long to realize it. Rebecca stood in the observation deck of her flagship, watching the wreckage of the Alliance fleet drift through space. The victory was complete, but she took no pleasure in the destruction. Every ship represented thousands of beings who had died because their leaders chose greed over justice. Marcus joined her at the observation window. Reports coming in from across the galaxy, he said. Revolution on 37 Federation worlds. The Sarn Empire is in complete chaos. Nexus Consortium has declared bankruptcy and dissolved. And our casualties? Rebecca asked. Light. Less than 300 killed, mostly during the boarding actions. Your plan worked perfectly. Rebecca nodded but did not smile. This was just the beginning. Destroying the old order is easy compared to building something better. She activated the galaxy-wide communication system one final time. Her image appeared on screens throughout known space as she made her announcement to trillions of beings. I am Rebecca Torres, Supreme Commander of the Liberation Front, she declared. Today marks the end of the old galactic order based on oppression and slavery. Any government or organization that tolerates the enslavement of sentient beings will be considered an enemy of the Liberation Front. She paused to let her words sink in before continuing. But we offer more than just destruction. Any species, any world, any individual who shares our vision of freedom and justice is welcome to join us. Together we will build a new galaxy where all beings are truly free. The broadcast ended, leaving the galaxy in stunned silence. Within hours, requests for membership in the Liberation Front began pouring in from hundreds of worlds. The revolution Rebecca had started in a gladiator arena was becoming a new galactic civilization. Standing in her command center, Rebecca looked at star charts showing Liberation Front territory spreading across the galaxy like wildfire. The hunted had indeed become the hunter, but now she faced an even greater challenge. She had to become something more than a predator. She had to become a builder of worlds and leader of civilizations. The hunt was over. The real work was just beginning. 5 years had passed since the great battle that shattered the old galactic order. Rebecca Torres stood in the observation dome of Haven Station, now grown into a massive structure that housed over 50 million beings from hundreds of different species. Below her, construction ships worked around the clock building new sections and defense platforms. The Liberation Front controlled over 300 star systems and was growing every day. What had started as a rebellion of escaped slaves had become the most powerful force in the galaxy. But Rebecca had learned that winning a war was easier than building a lasting peace. Dr. Elena Rodriguez entered the observation dome carrying her daily reports. As Minister of Science and Technology, she oversaw research projects that were revolutionizing how the galaxy used technology. Her latest breakthrough combined human creativity with alien knowledge to develop faster-than-light communication across unlimited distances. The new communication network is operational, Elena announced with excitement. We can now coordinate activities instantly across our entire territory. No more waiting weeks for messages to travel between distant worlds. Rebecca smiled as she reviewed the technical specifications.
This will change everything.
How long before we can extend the network to non-member worlds? 6 months, maybe less, Elena replied. But there might be political complications. The remaining Federation worlds see this as a threat to their independence. The old Galactic Federation had largely collapsed after Rebecca's revelations about their involvement in slavery. Most member worlds had either joined the Liberation Front or declared independence. Only a few dozen worlds remained loyal to the old government, and they were struggling to maintain basic services. Captain Tom Bradley arrived with military reports from across Liberation Front space. As Admiral of the fleet, he commanded over 5,000 ships and had transformed the Liberation Front military from a collection of rebels into the galaxy's most professional fighting force. Patrol reports indicate the Outer Rim pirates are testing our boundaries again, Tom reported. They think we are too spread out to defend all our territory effectively. Rebecca studied the tactical displays showing pirate activity. These were not the organized slave traders she had fought before, but opportunistic raiders hoping to profit from the chaos of the changing galactic order. Recommendations? She asked. Hit them hard and fast, Tom advised. Show them that Liberation Front territory is not an easy target. A few decisive victories will convince the others to find different hunting grounds. Marcus Bradley entered the dome carrying intelligence reports from their spy networks. As Director of Intelligence, he maintained agents throughout the galaxy who provided early warning about potential threats to Liberation Front security. We have a bigger problem than pirates, Marcus announced grimly. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected something approaching from outside the galaxy. Multiple large objects traveling at incredible speed. Rebecca felt a chill run down her spine. Details? The objects are massive, each one larger than our biggest space stations. They are definitely artificial constructs, but the design is unlike anything in our databases. They will reach the outer systems in approximately 6 months. Rebecca walked to the main tactical display and studied the incoming threat. After building a new galactic civilization, she now faced the possibility of invasion from outside the galaxy entirely. Have you been able to communicate with them? She asked. Marcus shook his head. We have tried every communication method known to galactic science. Either they cannot receive our signals or they are choosing not to respond. Elena studied the sensor data with growing concern. The energy signatures are enormous. If these are warships, they could pose a serious threat to our entire civilization. Rebecca made her decision quickly. Begin immediate preparations for potential conflict. I want our fleets mobilized and our defenses strengthened, but also prepare diplomatic teams for potential first contact. We do not know if these beings are hostile. Over the following weeks, the Liberation Front began the largest military mobilization in its history. Every member world contributed ships, personnel, and resources. The civilian population was warned about the potential threat but not panicked. Rebecca had learned that honest communication was always better than keeping secrets, but Rebecca also made a surprising decision. She sent messages to the remnants of the old Galactic Federation and even the surviving Sarn Empire colonies, offering to coordinate a joint defense against the external threat. "Some of our people think you are making a mistake," Marcus told her during one of their planning sessions. "These governments were our enemies. Why should we help them?" Rebecca looked out at the stars where the unknown objects were approaching. "Because they are still people from our galaxy. If this is an invasion, we need to present a united front. Personal grudges do not matter when facing extinction." The response to Rebecca's offer surprised many. President Adams of the Federation Remnant agreed to coordinate defense efforts. Even some Sarn Empire worlds put aside their pride to join the alliance. The approaching threat had accomplished what years of diplomacy could not, uniting the galaxy against a common enemy. As the unknown objects entered the outer systems, their true nature became clear. They were not warships but massive colony ships, each one carrying millions of refugees from a galaxy consumed by some cosmic disaster. The beings inside were fleeing from something so terrible that they had abandoned their entire civilization to seek safety in unknown space. Rebecca led the first contact team personally. When the alien refugees' leader, a being that looked like living crystal, met her aboard Haven Station, the conversation changed galactic history forever. "I am resonance of the deep places, the crystal being communicated through harmonic vibrations. We are the last survivors of the Andromeda galaxy. Our home was consumed by entities from dimensions beyond normal space-time. We have traveled for generations seeking a new home." Rebecca felt the weight of the moment as she responded, "I am Rebecca Torres, Supreme Commander of the Liberation Front. Our galaxy has experienced much conflict recently, but we have learned to build cooperation between different species. You are welcome here." What followed were months of complex negotiations as the galaxy adapted to accommodate millions of new refugees. The crystal beings brought advanced technologies and knowledge, but they also brought warnings about the entities that had destroyed their home galaxy. "They are called the Devourers," Resonance explained during one of their briefings. "They consume entire dimensions, leaving nothing behind but empty void. Our scientists believe they move between galaxies like diseases, consuming each one completely before moving on." Rebecca realized that the challenges she had overcome, slavery, corruption, galactic war, were nothing compared to the threat these Devourers represented. But she also saw an opportunity. The galaxy was more united than it had ever been, and now they had allies with knowledge of advanced defensive technologies. "How long do we have?" Rebecca asked during an emergency council meeting with leaders from across the galaxy. "Our calculations suggest the Devourers will detect this galaxy within 50 years, Resonance replied. "Once they begin their approach, we will have perhaps a decade to prepare." Rebecca stood before the assembled leaders and made her proposal. "We have 50 years to transform this galaxy into something the Devourers have never faced before. Not just another collection of worlds to consume, but a unified civilization capable of fighting back." The Galactic Unity Project, as historians would later call it, became Rebecca's greatest achievement. Under her leadership, every species in the galaxy contributed their unique knowledge and abilities to prepare for the coming threat. The crystal beings provided dimensional shielding technology. Human creativity found new ways to combine different alien sciences. Even former enemies worked together toward the common goal of survival. Haven Station grew into the largest artificial structure in the galaxy, serving as both a military command center and a symbol of unity between species. Rebecca's apartment in the command tower remained simple despite her power. She still kept the small toolkit she had carried as a scientist, a reminder of how far she had traveled from those early days on Kepler 442b. Marcus found her there on the 5th anniversary of the Great Battle, looking out at the construction fleets working on the galaxy's outer defense grid. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if the Vorthans had never raided your research station?" he asked. Rebecca considered the question seriously. "I think someone else would have eventually led this revolution. Maybe it would have taken longer or happened differently, but freedom always finds a way. Humans are not the only species that refuses to accept slavery." "But you did something more than just end slavery," Marcus pointed out. "You united the galaxy. Without your leadership, we would not be ready for what is coming. Rebecca turned away from the window to look at her oldest friend and ally. I learned something important during all these years, Marcus. Being a predator is not about being the strongest or the most ruthless. It is about being the smartest and most adaptable. When the devourers arrive, they will discover that this galaxy has become something they cannot consume. The communication system activated, bringing reports from across the galaxy. New defense platforms were coming online around a dozen systems. The joint research project had achieved another breakthrough in dimensional manipulation. 3 more species from the Outer Rim had requested membership in the Liberation Front. Rebecca listened to the reports with satisfaction. She had started as a captured scientist, become a gladiator, then a rebel leader, and finally the architect of galactic civilization. But her greatest transformation was yet to come. When the Devourers eventually arrived, they would find a galaxy ready for them. They would face not scattered worlds fighting separately, but a unified civilization that had learned to turn diversity into strength. They would discover that humans had taught the galaxy something new about warfare, that the greatest predators were not those who destroyed everything, but those who built something worth defending. Rebecca Torres, the woman who had once been hunted as prey, now stood as the guardian of trillions of lives across hundreds of species. She had risen from victim to gladiator to queen to something greater than any single title could contain. She was the protector of a galaxy, and her watch would never end. As night fell over Haven Station, Rebecca returned to her reports and planning sessions. There was still so much work to do. The Devourers were coming, but they would find the galaxy ready. The hunted had become the predator, and now the predator had become something even more dangerous. She had become hope itself. The story of Rebecca Torres, the Predator Queen, had become legend. But the legend was just beginning. In the years to come, when beings across the galaxy faced impossible odds, they would remember her example and refuse to surrender. Because she had taught them the most important lesson of all, that there is no prey so helpless that it cannot become the hunter, and no hunter so powerful that it cannot be defeated by those who refuse to give up. The galaxy was ready, and Rebecca Torres, who had once studied bacteria on a distant world, now prepared to defend all life against the ultimate predator. The hunt for survival was about to begin.